I'm Christine Moon. I'm on the Android team. Joe is a friend of my husband's, but I got to know him over the years. I'm really excited that he's here to share with us what he's been doing in Osaka. And Grace is a co-host of this talk. She's been helping out with the posters or the flyers, and her husband Chris, who's also a Googler, I think. No, okay, he's not. is helping to record. So I think Joe will provide a little background on himself, but we are going to save some time for Q&A because Q&As are more interesting. And there's also lunch. The table's reserved at Charlie's, so after the talk we can have lunch together with Joe. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. Today I wanted to do just a couple things. One is talk about our new work in Japan. We're a startup college, and we're going to be launching hopefully in 2015, and talk about just Japan, education and innovation, and just things that are going on in Japan. Maybe do a little compare and contrast with China and Korea as well. Okay. So before I get started, let me show you just two quick videos. This is the first one, and this details just Osaka, so you can get a chance to check it out. Okay, the first one. And the second video, just want to show you just maybe a minute of this video. A Japanese person put together just this video on what junior high students in Japan are kind of facing, and I just want to show you just a little bit of this one as well. This is students that refuse to go to school. Okay, so that's a little bit of data on junior high age students in Japan, ages 12 to 15. So this is Osaka Station, and Osaka is probably the 15th largest city in the world, roughly 17.5 million people in the metro area. And one thing interesting about Osaka is that Tokyo, the largest metro area in the world, has 36 million people. And so these two cities are in the same country. And if you combine the Osaka area, the Tokyo metro area, and the Nagoya metro area, that's roughly 40-some% of Japan's 127 million people. So if you go by just the square footage in Japan, Japan is not the most densely populated nation in the world. But if you go by cities, by far, Japan is the most densely populated nation in the world. The video you saw of Osaka earlier, that's not rush hour. I don't want to take footage in rush hour because it'd just be too crazy. So that's just what it looks like normally. So you actually haven't seen crowded till you've been to Tokyo or till you've been to Osaka. It's just the sea of people is just amazing there. So we are a college, and we actually we're not a college yet. I am the president of a non-existent college with no professors yet and no students. And you might be wondering, what the heck is going on? A year ago, my organization, Mission to the World, we are a Christian organization, wanted to launch a college in Japan. And so they asked me to lead this endeavor, and we said yes. So last March, my wife and I were the only two people on this team. We had nothing except a vision and a dream that this would happen. And so I want to talk about just one thing today primarily, is about reaching the forgotten youth of Japan and how we plan on reaching them through our unique platform. So before we do that, just a quick guess. Can you guess the top 10 largest universities in America? Just think. And just think about approximate numbers. And then think, how many of these schools are online? And then how many of these schools are 4-year universities versus 2-year colleges? So the most recent government data only goes back to 2010. So just to show you, most of these schools, the ones that are in red and blue, have gone up in number. The blue schools are schools that are majority online. So this is from 2010. Actually, on the way over here to San Francisco, I just read a magazine that had Liberty University's student enrollment. They're over 100,000 now. And Kaplan is also over 100,000. And the University of Phoenix is probably around 350,000. Have you heard of any of these schools? Do you think anyone have heard of more than 5 of these schools? It's very unlikely, right? These are the largest schools in America. Over in Asia, where I live, Laureate Education is a for-profit educational group. Just in Asia alone, over 80% of this number is in Asia, 70 to 80%. And so they run for-profit business schools primarily. Raffles, a company based out of Singapore, just in their for-profit education division has over 24,000 students. They run hotels and restaurants and other things as well. So education is actually changing throughout the world, in particular in Asia. And so one of the things as we look here is kind of traditional education. Is it going to continue? Is it going to change? And you see platforms like Khan's Academy or Udacity, Udemy, all these new kind of platforms that are coming up are providing education in ways that just did not exist even 3 years ago. I mean, Liberty University, has anyone ever heard of Liberty University? So they're a small Christian school in Virginia, and I think their college enrollment is like 3,000 or 4,000 maybe, and their online enrollment is 97,000, 98,000. Just amazing, and they're educating people in Asia, in Africa, and South America. And so this is kind of the changing face of education. Now, one thing just before you know, to understand Japan, you kind of have to understand space. So Japan has 127 million people. Roughly, the square footage of Japan is similar to Montana. So imagine if everyone in these blue states decided to move to Montana. That'd be pretty crowded, right? But actually, if you take out the arable land, the farming land, and you take out the rocks, the trees, the volcanoes, the water, the marsh areas, the actual livable space in Japan is only about the size of Massachusetts. Now, imagine everybody in the blue states here, the entire East Coast decides we're going to move to Massachusetts. Wait, there's more. And imagine if roughly 40% of those people in Massachusetts decided to live in just 3 cities in Massachusetts. That's Japan. So the population density is just absurd. It's just absurd. And Japanese have come up with social kind of norms to get over this. For example, Japanese do not walk with their heads up. Why? Well, it's very awkward if someone's face is right here. So they walk, even before cell phones, they would walk with their heads down like this. And so on a train, like it's very common for you to be right next to somebody. It's kind of awkward. You're like looking deeply into their eyes, you know? So just people walk like this. And it's very easy. I'm Asian American, so for the most part, maybe except for my weight and size, I can fit in Japan. But the easiest way to spot somebody that's not Japanese, if they're Asian, is they look up when they walk. And so, again, to understand Japan is to understand space. And a lot of what's come from Japan culturally is because of this population density. Some things you may not know. Japan is the third largest economy after the US and China. Japan has a whole host of social problems. One of the most important ones to people like me is in-house divorce. So this is a case where a husband and wife are married on paper, but for all intents and purposes are divorced. The husband might have a girlfriend, the wife might fantasize about some Korean movie star, and they've been sleeping in separate rooms since they've had their first child. And they're okay with that. And this is such a big number that this term was coined by a Japanese sociologist, in-house divorce. Divorce is still a little bit of a stigma, so people just stay together and just lead completely separate lives. So a few days ago, March 11th, was the 2-year anniversary of the great earthquake and tsunami in Japan. 25,000 people died in that earthquake and tsunami. But people don't know that that year, 38,000 Japanese people committed suicide. So last year, the number finally dipped to like 29,700. But before that, 14 years straight, more than 30,000 Japanese committed suicide. So in Japan, we have a tsunami of deaths every year. Every year, that's greater than the earthquake and tsunami that happened 2 years ago. Every year. So Japan has some significant social problems. What's interesting for a lot of us who work in Japan is hikikomori. And hikikomori is a social disease that exists only in Japan. It does not exist in China or Korea. And it's basically internal suicide. It's where over 1 million, mostly men, between the ages of 18 and 28 said, I'm just going to quit. So some of them went to really top universities. They just quit. They quit talking. They chronicle young men who just haven't spoken to anyone in 2 years. And generally 2 or 3 generations live at home. So they just kind of hang out at home and play games. And it's because of depression and the pressure. You know, just as someone who's Asian, I'm familiar with some of these issues, but I have never seen, and I travel quite a bit, I've just never seen a country where young people face so much pressure. Just judged for the way you look, how you act, which is why in Japan, there's really no middle ground people. If you've actually been to Japan, you know what I'm talking about. It's 99% conformists and 1% like outer space. You know, so in Japan, it's normal to see like a sea of people in dark suits and to see the one, well, man with like a mini skirt, hairy legs, purple hair, tattoos up and down. And that's normal. That's Japan. There's really not much middle ground. And part of it is because of this pressure that they face. Japan's economy. So this is a kind of new fact for me. You know, in 2005, Japan's economy was twice the size of China's. For 40 years, Japan was the second largest economy in the world. 40 years after America. But now, China's economy is not only larger, you can just see the growth rate of China versus Japan. Japanese economists refer to the 90s as the lost decade economically. The 2000s were also considered a lost decade, and now they're going into their third lost decade. But because Japanese parts and Japanese manufacturing and just operational skills are so top-notch and high-tech, Japan will still be a wealthy country for many, many years to come, but pretty much the decline, and you could see it, and the government's trying to fix this. And the biggest problem is lack of children because of the pressure and sort of the challenges that people face. Japanese are not getting married, and they're not having children. Birth rate is under 1. So that's just crazy because the replenishing rate is 2. There are 127 million Japanese now, and within 40 years, the Japanese population at this rate will go to about 80 million. Another challenge, Japan has some of the strictest immigration laws in the whole world. There are South Koreans who were basically brought over as slaves between, actually it wasn't South Korea, it was just Koreans. They were just one country then. Between 1910 and 1945, and only like 20-some years ago were they allowed citizenship. So you have people, foreigners who were there, 4 generations who were not allowed citizenship, not even get green cards. They have kind of a special visa of sorts. So Japan has some great challenges. Now, as we head into kind of why a school like ours, I believe, is important, from 2003 to roughly 2010, this is the percentage of Japanese recruits who want to work for their own company, work for their current company, or who want to start their own companies. You can just see the downward trend. As the economy gets worse, as the pressures mount, you just want to stay with what's what's stable. You know, I joke around, if Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, if his parents were Japanese, there would be no Facebook. You're going to drop out of Harvard? What? Are you crazy? You know, and so the pressure and such would be that even all these talented entrepreneurs, they'll just not take the plunge because there's just so much social pressure. So the top is just a typical Japanese stoplight. I mean, it's very, very common. It's a sea of salarymen. We don't really use that term in the US, but corporate workers. Kaishain is what they would say. And then on the bottom, this was actually a Japanese blogger came up with this. The Japanese now have a term called sho shokukei dansei. And sho means grass, shoku is to eat, and dansei is man. Grass-eating man, herbivores. And basically it's women say that of Japanese men who are wimps and wusses, and totally the opposite of this, the samurai archetype. You know, now it's more this. And there's actually been a lot of complaints by Japanese women, by bloggers, famous people, that there's no manly men left in Japan, and that's why they're not getting married. Interesting. Those are not my words. Those are words by actual Japanese women. And just informally, I speak quite a lot in Japan to church groups and universities. And I just say, what do you think? And I would say about 80 to 90% of Japanese women have said the majority of guys I know are shokukei. They're herbivores. They're grass eaters. They need to eat some meat. Japanese do eat meat, but it's figurative, right? They eat a lot of fish too, as you know. So this is just very interesting, some of the cultural shifts going on. Now, one thing about Japan that you may not know is just the rigors of entering a university, the most difficult college entrance exams in the world. Now, before you even get to that, now this is changing because of the population dearth. Around 14 in junior high, the government separates you into two groups. You have the academic track, the people that will go to college, and then you have the technical track, the people that will make cars and computers and those kinds of things. And so you go to a technical high school versus a academic high school, and you can pretty much break it down 99.9% by economic status, how much money your parents have. Because you can't get into a good high school without having gone to juku. And juku is like an after-school training center. In Korean, they would call these hagwons. And so we don't have these in the US. They're basically just a way to get ahead in math and in English. And the only way to get into a good high school is to go to juku. You can't go to juku unless you have a lot of money, and so on and so forth. And so this separated the group. Now that's no problem because when the economy was doing well, there were lots of jobs. There was tenure, lifetime employment. But Japan's been reeling economically, so now those jobs are far and few between. Also, there are less and less children, which means that the governments finally, they can't just stick everyone in technical track, so they're slowly starting to bring people more over into the academic track. So suppose I'm a Japanese student and I want to go to college and I go to the academic track. When I graduate high school, there are two tests I have to take. There's a test, first test is called the Senta Shiken. It literally means center test. The center test is, am I qualified to go to college? So I take that. Roughly 110,000 Japanese students take this test every year. Now, after I take this test, which is the most difficult college entrance exam in the world, then I have to take another test called Niji Shiken, which means basically second test. And this second test is I pick a school and a major. So Tokyo University, best school in Japan. That would be the most difficult test. You know, second best, Kyoto University. Third, second most difficult, and so on and so forth. There's 118 accredited colleges in Japan. So 1 through 18, they have test scores, and they're ranked by these test scores. Now look at these numbers. 110,000 took the Senta Shiken, and 442,000 took the Niji Shiken. So what does that mean? It means there are these, they call them ronins. A ronin is a samurai who's basically left his master and has nowhere to go. Well, the students in between the Senta Shiken and the Niji Shiken are called ronins because they have no school. And so the parents are financially bearing the burden of these young people. So a lot of them don't go to college, they're 20 or 21 because they have their sights set on Tokyo University or Kyoto University or Waseda or Kei or Hitotsubashi, like the best schools in Japan. And so just think about this. Just look at this discrepancy. It's just crazy. And then some of them actually quit and drop out. And a significant number of these become hikikomori because of the pressure of not being able to get into the school of your choice. In Japan, you only have 4 years of easy life, and that's your years of college. A high school is extremely difficult and pressure-filled. And once you go to a company, you're set. Your life is basically given to this company. So they have these 4 years to experience some freedom, and so Japanese students don't study. And they kind of bypass this by just making it very, very hard to get in, so only the bright kids get in, which means that once they graduate and they get a job, then they'll do very, very well. And that's kind of the system that they have. And here's where it starts getting interesting. Anyone know who this is? His name is Mikitani Hiroshi, and he's the founder CEO of Rakuten. Rakuten. Anyone ever heard of Rakuten? They just bought out Buy.com. So Rakuten is an interesting company. They're kind of like Amazon instead of being something that sells to consumer, a B2C, they're a B2B2C. That's their focus. So they set up like mom and pop shop. Let's say you run a fishing store up in Hokkaido and you wanted to have an online presence. Well, you use Rakuten system, and they're kind of like middlemen that way. Mikitani is now I think he's the third richest man in Japan with like $7 or $8 billion. And he left his company, went to Harvard Business School. Now, that's all normal. There's lots of Japanese that have done that. But here's what's interesting. In March 2010, he came on TV, and he said, Japan is lagging behind because of one thing, and that's English. And he explained that you cannot be globalized in this world without English. And he cited the Japanese as having the second lowest TOEIC, which is the test of English as a conversation test. It's very similar to TOEFL, but just in English. The second lowest scores in all of Asia. Only Mongolia scored lower than Japan. Recently, Japan had the absolute lowest English language test scores out of all first world nations in the world. And so, anyone ever been to Japan? If you've ever been outside of Tokyo, you cannot get around with just English. I could get around Korea, I can get around Taiwan, obviously Singapore. I've been to rural China, and I could get around with English. There are places you just can't get around. When I first moved to Nagoya, Japan, where we currently live, because I'm Asian, like people don't think I'm American, so I go over there, and I'd say, excuse me, how do I do this? And then people just start yelling at me because like they think I can't understand what they're saying. And I would sometimes have to talk to 20 or so people to find somebody that spoke English. I mean, I speak Japanese now, but back then I didn't. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And so this guy came on TV and said, look, if you can't learn English and you're one of my 7,000 employees, if you can't learn English in 2 years, we're going to go all English. You're going to be fired. Now just think about that. This is a company of 7,000 plus people. And he said, if you can't do emails in English, if you can't conduct meetings in English, and he was so convinced that English is the key to globalization, and Japan's weakness is globalization, and he dubbed that term Englishnization. It's not a real word. That's his word. So you might be wondering, hey, wait a minute. The richest man in Japan is a guy named Yanai, and he's the founder of Uniqlo. Anyone ever heard of Uniqlo? So Uniqlo is going to just kick butt in America soon. And he too said, like in September of that year, he said, forget it. We need to go global. So he says that all our stores, every single one of his, 50,000 employees, because they're the leading retailer in Asia, they must be able to do business in English. Everybody. So you can just feel the pressure that 3 or 4 of the, 2 of the richest men in Japan, and they're very, very influential companies, they said, we're going to go all English or you're going to be fired. So just crazy. The CEO of Honda, when he first heard this, said, that was stupid. I mean, Japanese don't say that, but actually in the media, he said, that was stupid. That's a stupid policy. But Rakuten is kicking butt now. And actually, I know a young protege, a Stanford grad, who worked for Rakuten, and he says, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Everyone's just panicking, like, how do I read this email? And if you know anything about Japanese, Japanese is one of the 6 most difficult languages for a native English speaker to learn, along with Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Japanese, Hungarian, and Arabic. The State Department said these are the 6 most difficult languages for an American to get to fluency. You know what that means? It means that English is the most difficult language for native speakers of these 6 languages. And so it's just a great, great challenge. Great, great challenge. So what the heck are we doing? Who are we? We are a Christian group. And obviously, we have 2 goals. We have goal 1A and goal 1B. Goal 1A is obviously our Christian faith. Japan is a nation with very, very few Christians. So we want to see Christianity grow in Japan. It is the second largest unreached Christian group in the world. And so that's why we're there. That's 1A. And so we want to see churches grow. We want to see we just want to see more churches, more Christian leaders produced. But we have a goal that's 1B, and that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of my talk, is we want to serve the poor. Now you might be thinking, Japanese has poor people? If you've ever been to Japan, have you seen homeless people? Not a lot. And everyone seems like they're really hardworking. What kind of poor people do they have? So I want to talk about that today. This is Mayumi Sato, and she is what's considered a working class poor. 15 million Japanese are working class poor. Japan is interesting. For such a rich nation, the people are not very wealthy. There's a term that both Japanese, Koreans, and Chinese use of Japan. Two terms. One is called rich Japan, poor Japanese. Have you heard of this term? Powerful Japan, weak Japanese. So the first term, rich Japan, poor Japanese, means the country is a wealthy country. But there's actually a lot of people who are quite poor. If you make less than, I think the average middle income, the median income is about 35,000 US a year. If you've been in Japan, it's very hard to live on 35,000 a year. But people who make half of that. So imagine a family making 17,000 a year in the most expensive nation in the world. That's the working class poor. And there's 15.7 million of these people. So I tell people it's like this. Imagine, take all the people in America that are on welfare, take the 99.9% of the homeless people, all the people without much visible skill, and then imagine if they have a work ethic that's incredible. What are you going to have? You're going to have people like Mayumi, who makes minimum wage and works 2 jobs, 30-some hours each. She's not a full-time employee at each place. She delivers newspapers, and she works for a restaurant chain that makes bentos, which are like the Japanese lunch boxes. She works 60, 70 hours a week or so. She has a 17-year-old daughter, and she cannot afford to send her daughter to college. That's her dream, to send her daughter, Mayu, who they did not show in the article. They wants to send her to college, but they can't afford the $10,000 in tuition. So this group basically gets completely neglected because of the educational system, because of the cost of living, and also because of the shame. In Asian culture, there's a lot of shame. So she basically lies to her family about her standing. And she talks about vacations that she can't afford. She talks about doing things for her daughter that she can't afford. And they just live in like a closet, basically, a rented closet, and live on that. And so this is the group that our college primarily aims to reach. So how did this vision come about to start a college for this group? On the top left is one of my students. I'll call him A-san. And A-san and I are very close. When I first met him, he was only 23. Highly intelligent young man. Graduated from a technical school. And I said, look, you're such a bright guy. You never thought of going to college? And he said, I wasn't much interested in education when I was young. And my family just didn't have the money. So in his early 20s, he met some American missionaries. And he became a Christian, and he decided, I want to be a pastor. So I need to go to school. The problem is he never went to college, doesn't really have any kind of an academic background. And so the school that I had worked for at that time, a Christian school, we admitted him. And he's actually, even though we're a graduate school, and as a special, he was one of the best students that we ever had. What he lacked kind of in sort of big picture details, he made up for it in effort and through his intelligence. This is a class that I taught called Organizational Strategy for Nonprofit Leaders. We had the Chief Marketing Officer of McDonald's Japan come as a guest speaker. And for someone like him, to meet someone like him is just unreal. And he's like, strategy, I've never heard of that word. And he said, what's leadership? I thought you were just born a leader. And just all these concepts that some of us take for granted he had never heard. He's like a sponge in this class. And so I really identified him as someone with great potential. And so I actually took him with me. That's actually in South Korea. I did some lectures over there, and I just took him with me. And then he finally got to see things that he had never seen. And so he's one of the main reasons why we want to launch a college like this, because a guy like him is going to fall through the cracks. And he's going to be working a manual labor job, which is okay if that's all you can do. But he has so much great potential to be anything that he wants. He could be a professor if he wanted. He could be a tech worker. Obviously, he wants to lead a church. But he has really great abilities. And yet, because of the Japanese school system, he has no opportunity at all. So, how are you going to start a college in Japan? Isn't that really expensive? Yes. Well, here's how we're going to start a college. We have 15, and another 8 people are wanting to come over. we're going to start a college because we're not going to pay any of our professors. And you're like, what? You know, so over $1 million in salary, we're not going to give one penny because we can't. And that's how we can start a college. Now, every person here is a Christian, and it's because of their Christian commitment that they've decided to raise their own salary to their churches and friends to come teach. This is why Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all the good schools pulled out of Japan. The cost of operating is too high. Actually, they're all in China now. It's just too expensive. But what if we could launch a school where there were people who were just passionate, who really, really wanted to build the school, and who were willing to sacrifice, and who were willing to raise their own salary? What kind of school would you get? Well, I think that we will get the most passionate and committed teachers in all of Japan. Because everyone here is there not because of money, not because of opportunity, because they really believe in the vision of what we're doing. And so this is our team, and we're hoping that they will be able to get there in the next 2-3 years. And so since people are raising their own salaries, they're working, and they're going to be slowly plodding along and moving there. This is an area of Osaka called Dotonbori, and it's like just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like the Strip in Vegas, Times Square, everything. This is 11 p.m. on like a Thursday night, I think. There's like 10,000 young people there, and there's everything here. I mean, there's everything from businessmen, high school students, prostitutes, steak shops, sushi places, weird, wacky people. It's just you name it, it's here. There's religious cults. There's just you name it, it's here, Dotonbori. If you ever visit me in Osaka, I'll show you. So I'm just walking around this place, and in Japan, there's a culture where they send young girls in particular out to grab men. Now, you don't know if they work for a restaurant or if they work for a massage parlor, not a legitimate one, but one of those massage parlors. And you just don't know because they kind of all look the same. And they use the same tactics to bring you. And they especially go after men who look my age, 40 or older, because we have money. I don't really have money, but people like me tend to have money. So they come grab you. And then, one time this girl just kept on following me, and she just would not take no for an answer. So finally I said, okay, I'm going to talk to this girl. I asked her how old she was. She's 18. And I say, so what's your day like? And she says that, and she called me Oni-chan, which is like the word for older brother. A girl I had just met, obviously. And what are you doing? She dropped out of high school and just started talking and engaging with her. And she says her brother, and her mom all work 2 or 3 part-time jobs each to survive. Turns out it was a steak joint. And I said, well, how do you get paid? She says, well, if you buy a steak dinner, a tiny steak, about $50, then she'll get a cut of that. And every person that comes in, she gets a cut of that. So she's just busting her butt working. And I gauged her, and she was intelligent. She was bright. And I had to go. I almost wanted to just go eat at this place just so that I can continue talking with her, my friend and I. And that's our target group. That's our target group. We want to reach this group and provide opportunities that they would not have. How can they afford to pay for our college? They can't. So we're going to offer part-time courses. As a school, we're going to offer courses basically morning, afternoon, and night. And not a single Japanese college can do this. Again, because we're small, we can do things that a big school cannot. We're going to have a flexible loan program. Japanese schools do not have loan programs. So we're going to allow someone to go to our school and pay it back based on a percentage of your salary with very little interest. And again, our goal is to see young people rise up. And the third focus of our school is females. So I don't know if you knew this, but Japan has one of the lowest female workforces in terms of management or above. I think it is the lowest in the world, and I think South Korea is the second lowest. But I see women who go to the University of Tokyo, roughly equivalent to the Harvard of Japan, or the Stanford of Japan, depending on where you went. You got 2 Yale people, Yale of Japan, okay. So, but they went to a top school, and I'll be in a meeting, and this lady will be making coffee. And that's fine to make coffee, but such a waste of her talents. And in some sense, it just kind of upsets me, because you have all this potential. In Japan, it's a guarantee. The more female workers you have, your company's going to succeed. It's not a guarantee, but it's a very high rate, like 80 to 90%. They just did a poll. The higher number of female workers, the chance of your startup succeeding goes up and up. Because women work for much lower pay. They're they're very, very motivated, intelligent, and bright. So our school basically is going to be targeted primarily, probably 70, 80% of our school will be like that young lady I met here who works for the steak bar. So how can you get involved? Well, one of the things is we have a program called the Genesis 100. And just a few months ago, I was just thinking, wow, how am I going to start this school? You know, I can't pay anybody. We don't have any rich backers. And I knew that I can't ask people to donate unless I'm willing to donate myself. So it's not a large amount, so I just came up with this idea. If I just lower my standard of living, I'll take a salary cut by $200 a month or so. In a year, that's a little over $2,000. In 5 years, that's $10,000. And if 99 other people just match me, that's $1 million, which gives us kind of the startup funds that we need. And as a small school, again, we have some significant advantages. We're going to rent facilities all over Osaka. So we're not tied to one location. We're going to be very convenient using a hybrid technology, both online and in-person courses. And so I've asked others, I speak often at schools and churches and places, if people would just match my own donation. And so far, 30 people have said yes. So we have about 350,000 raised. You know, some people pledge $40 a month. Others will do like 10 grand a year for the next 5 years. And so one way for you to get involved is you work for Google. Google matches to nonprofit. If you wanted to donate $200 a month, that's only $100 a month for you. So here's my pitch. So please, if you work for Google, really put that to use. And we want to make a special plaque for the Genesis 100 and put it at our front door. And you can have an opportunity to help launch a college. It's amazing, isn't it? And not a single dollar that you give will go towards salaries. Not a single one. I mean, except for Japanese salaries, but not foreigner salaries. We just need rental facilities, and we just need an opportunity to get started. A second way you can get involved is we're actually looking for teachers, and we're looking for specialists. So if you have some kind of specialty, we're going to be the first college in Japan with no books in our library. We're going to go completely online. And we get to do things as a small school that a big school cannot, because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't really know what we're doing. So please help us. Come and help us. Set up a system for us. Do an audit for us. And for those of you with graduate degrees, you can actually teach a course for us part-time. And I'm going to try to build a faculty residence. So you'll pay your own way. You'll vacation in Japan, but at least we can house you for free. And then you teach for us for free and volunteer. And really engage and connect. We are a Christian college, so the professors, the full-time professors, the regular professors do need to subscribe to our Christian commitment. But you do not need to be a Christian to be an adjunct or a part-time teacher for our school. So anyone can get involved. And if you're a specialist, we would love to hear your story. Share a story of how you've overcome adversity or how your family has really helped you. And we want our students really to have hope and a new opportunity and a new life. So this is our website. Go check it out. I'll have some business cards up front for those of you who are interested. And thank you. Thanks for coming today. And we'll have a Q&A session. And please join us for lunch. I'm really excited about this lunch. First time at Google, you know. So. Sure. Yeah. Any questions or on anything? Yes.
So I believe the average Japanese student gets about 6 years of English education through, primary school up through high school, and there have been public calls for everyone to teach or to learn English in the country before. Most recently, I think it peaked around 2001 or so, 2002. Do you see things about this most recent wave of demand for English skills? Do you see things that's different in this current wave than
not yet, except for the pressure they feel. So one thing is the Japanese excel at rote memorization. Excel. And so the idea is if I outwork you, I'll be better than you at something. But as you know, with certain things, hard work isn't the best way to get it. So if you know much about linguistics, think of the least intelligent friend that you have. Just think. That person is completely fluent in English. Amazing. Whereas there are PhDs from some top schools in the world I've had professors like that who why? Well, because language is a right brain activity, not a left brain one. But the way Japanese emphasize learning is left brain, tests, rather than social structures and the like. And the two cultures are like opposite cultures. So in Japan, for example, in the language, when I want to talk to you, I don't use the subject. To use the subject is to emphasize myself. Whereas if I say, I think this, I'm actually weakening the statement in English, right? I think it, you don't have to think it. In Japan, it's the opposite. When I say I, they're like, wow, Joe's really self-absorbed. He thinks this, you know? So it just makes it, you know, so my background, you know, I was a former philosophy professor, and I think the secret to learning English is not English grammar, but Western thought. Kind of like I make an assertion, someone challenges my assertion, and without that principle, it's just hard, and Japanese schools don't teach that. So Korea and China, you know, I think that the reason their English is better, and it's not because the school system is very similar, but because they've been a lot quicker to adapt Western thought, which is dialogue, engagement, and being able to disagree with a superior or being able to disagree with your teacher and not see it as a disagreement, but just seeing it as another viewpoint. In Japan, it's not like that. To disagree means you're challenging that person. So I never get any student to ever disagree with me in my classes because that means they're challenging me. You know, so sometimes I even say, just write it anonymously. And even then, it just doesn't come out. And it's their way of honoring me. It's the samurai model, the apprentice-master model. So it still hasn't really happened. I mean, I asked that young friend who works at Akuten, and he said, no, everyone's still pretty bad at English. You know, but so what happens is like when you have certain strengths, you end up emphasizing those strengths, right? Which is learning more words, more grammar. Like, have any of you ever taken the TOEFL test or looked at it? Nobody talks like that. You know, no native English speaker talks like that. And yet, if you learn that system, you know, the best Japanese learners in Japan, foreigners, are mostly people from like Nigeria or these places. And that's because they have no money for language school. They just go hang out with Japanese. And so they get good, whereas I know American and British corporate folks who actually go to a really top-level school, and their Japanese is terrible. So some of that same things is going on. So we're hoping to bring some change, some disruption. But again, not easy. Yes? Okay. Okay, so the question is, can you talk a little bit more about how God put this idea into your heart? You know, as a Christian, my goal is obviously to increase the name of Christ. I mean, that's my goal in life. And so one of the things, this is my own personal conviction, is looking at the New Testament in the Bible, Jesus consistently talks about serving the poor. And so, you know, when my wife and I moved to Japan because of this opportunity we had to help lead a school there, this is like 5 years ago, well, there's no poor people in Japan. Or so I thought, you know, because everyone seems hardworking, and they are, and everyone, but as I lived there and I saw just lots of people who are working class poor but live paycheck to paycheck, and with great potential. So that's the group we wanted to reach, and that's where this vision came about. But originally, it was just because there were just so few Christians in Japan. So I was recruited to help lead a theological seminary. I was the vice president of a seminary there. We work with young people just like Asan, the person that you saw, and just helping them become church leaders. Some of them run, you know, they work for nonprofits like Food for the Hungry, just mostly Christian, religious, faith-based nonprofit organizational leaders. So we're a school that trains those people. And as I went there, we thought, you know, but the number of people we could reach is so small. We wanted to scale it up. And that's where the vision for this school came about. Yes? Okay. Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So the question is what are some of the differences, because the educational system and some of the cultural things are similar between China, Japan, and Korea. So let me explain the powerful and weak. I didn't talk about that too much. So, and there's a saying, rich Japan, poor Japanese. Well, what does that mean? The nation is rich, but if you've ever been to Japan, the average Japanese person seems very poor versus here. People just don't live well. A couple of reasons. One is it's expensive, so people get this kind of saving mentality. Second, Japanese are prodigious savers. The average Japanese family has like $70,000 in savings. It's crazy. You know, that's like basically 2 years' salary for the average family. Do you have 2 years' salary saved in the bank? You know, we're so leveraged here in America and in Western culture. So part of it is just keeping that conservative tie, whereas Chinese and Koreans overall are bigger spenders. And one reason they're bigger spenders is, I think, it's because Western culture has creeped in much more influenced by Western ideas. If you go to Seoul or you go to Shanghai, it'll be rare for you to see anybody dressed in traditional Chinese or Korean wear. well, China's not a good example because of communism, but let's say Korea, like in Seoul, like the traditional clothing is hanbok. You'll never see it unless it's a special occasion. But in Japan, seeing women wear kimonos or men wear yukatas, I mean, it's normal. So they're just much more in touch with their past, which means there's such a stronger culture. So again, strong Japan, weak Japanese. A Korean professor told me this. He says, you know what the real difference between Korea and Japan is? He says, if you get 10 Koreans and 10 Chinese and 10 Japanese in a room, he says, one-on-one, the Chinese and Japanese will beat up the average, the Chinese and Korean will beat up the average Japanese guy. But you get 10 of them together, the Chinese and the Koreans will all fight over who's going to become the leader. And so nothing will get done. But you get 10 Japanese, it'll be clear. One person is the leader, and the 9 will follow him. That's a Korean guy said this, a Korean professor. And that, I think, captures well the idea, the groupthink mentality, which is why when Japanese leave Japan, they really cease to become Japanese in a lot of ways. And so those are some of the main differences. With English education, same thing. Because the Japanese did not really need English, like the Koreans and Chinese did. Again, think, for 40 years, they were the second biggest economy in the world until just a few years ago. 40 years. Number 2 after the US. And so it's one of those things like, I don't know if I had a teacher named Clayton Christensen, and he talks about disruption. One of the things is like, if you're doing really well, rather than thinking of new opportunities like Google does, sometimes you just do what you're good at because it's so important for you. You don't develop anything new. Then eventually, like Kodak, you die. You die. Because you're just doing the same thing over and over. While as these young upstarts, obviously they can't compete with you in the beginning, but eventually as it develops, it gets better. And this, you can look at this with like Japanese cars and Korean cars. So now Korean cars are kind of up top. Now, I mean, right now the car in China is not very good, but who knows what's going to happen later on. So that's kind of what's happening in Japan. The majority of the country is just doing what they're good at. And English is very, very difficult because of those cultural reasons. So, yes? How do we share? So we are an open school, and so most people are not, I would say about 90% of our students will not be Christian, but we have church leaders, nonprofit groups who we're going to ask to use our campus. So they will use our campus, we'll have a coffee shop, and so on and so forth. A church in Japan is so tiny, like 15 to 20 people, that they can't do anything, have no power, have, majority of their people are under 30. Over 60, sorry, that they want to reach the under 30 group. And so our college will be that. So we're just going to ask them to come and to participate and offer a platform. And again, because we are a Christian organization, our professors must prescribe to our Christian commitment to be a regular professor. We do not. We are a 2-year college, a Christian college, not a Bible school. What's the difference? The Bible school emphasizes training for those who are committed to that religion, Bible school or whatever. But as a Christian school, we are a school that believes in Christian education and a Christian worldview, but no one's required to subscribe to our belief system. So we are just a college taught by mostly Christian professors, teaching from a Christian worldview, using a Christian platform. And then we have U.S. Christian colleges that are our partners who are going to offer us their curriculum. So then our students, once they graduate, they could transfer into these schools in America. Or, now here's the amazing thing, someone like that A-san, the guy that I mentioned, has 0 chance of going to a Japanese college. Not 1, not 2%, 0% at his age. He's 26 now. But if he graduates from our school, because there are no junior colleges in Japan, they're all technical schools, he could actually go to the English language division of a Japanese university and graduate with a 4-year degree from a Japanese university in English. And so English gives the advantage in a way that, in that particular system. And that's what we want to offer the working class for. Yes, back there. Yeah. Well, there's lots of reasons. We could, actually I gave a talk over an hour long just on this very topic. But to sum it up, I think the reason has to do with just Japanese social structure. So in Japan, there's a big emphasis on the soto, which is the outside, and the naka, which is the inside. And that plays into everything. Christianity, Islam, any non-Japanese thing is just not Japanese. I can't do that. So it's not just Christianity that's been challenged in Japan. I mean, Islam is growing very, very fast in Korea, and actually in parts of China as well, but not in Japan. Japan also has a very weird, deviant cult. There's over 8,000 registered Japanese cults. 8,000. So these are groups that don't categorize under Judaism, Christianity, Shinto, all the major religions of the world. And so they just stick them in this group, new religious groups. And some of them are very aggressive, including the ones that blew up the Tokyo subway not that long ago. So, but that's the biggest challenge because of the inside-outside culture and not maintaining. You're either Japanese or you're not. So if you know the Japanese alphabet, there's a hiragana, which is native Japanese. There's kanji, which is Chinese characters. But they have another alphabet called katakana. And katakana is for foreign things or emphasis. So if I want to say go for my favorite team, I'll write that in the katakana alphabet. But foreigners, when you write your name, unless you're Chinese or Korean, then you'd have a kanji name. But if you're not Chinese or Korean, like my name is written in katakana, which signifies right off the bat, when you look at anything that has to do with my name, foreigner. So that I mean, for those of you that are not Asian, obviously you look like foreigners, but I don't look like a foreigner there. And so even that, so it's that inside-outside culture. You're just not Japanese. And so it's not just Christianity, just new ideas, period. Here's another thing. You're familiar with that song, Gangnam Style, the Korean song? That was #1 in basically every country in the world except for Japan. Most Japanese have no idea what that song's about. I know. What's wrong, you might be thinking, So. Yeah. Question?
It looks like you've done a lot of
Hmm.
Have you done any
Yes, they're much more successful in Korean, but not in Chinese. So Chinese is just as difficult for a Japanese person as English is in a lot of ways, apart from the writing system, and that's what gives them the advantage. So Japanese is relatively a non-tonal language. They have tones, but it's very low. So when Japanese speak Chinese, the Chinese person goes, what? What? They can't understand them. When Chinese speak Japanese, it sounds like nails on a blackboard, like it hurts their ears. It literally hurts their ears. And I didn't know what they were talking about until I started learning Japanese. It hurts my ears because of just the harshness of pronunciation. So that's one challenge. But Japanese are generally linguistically challenged, except for East Asian languages, because they share similar writing. It's just the writing system gives you that leg up. So I don't know if you're familiar with Chinese characters. You can see the character. Let's say it's a symbol for dog. Like the Koreans would say ke, the Japanese would say inu. I don't know what the Chinese say, but there's three words for the same symbol. So because of that, they can do it. But overall, it's really tough for Japanese. And because they've been the second richest country in the world, why do they need English? Now that their economy is slumping, they need it. Oh, and by the way, lest we think that native English is what we're after, as a native English speaker, some of us struggle in China or Singapore. What? What are you saying? A lot of people who learn English as a second language actually are better at speaking English to somebody in India, somebody in China, someone in Thailand. I took some students to Thailand on this trip, and I didn't know what the speaker was saying. He was speaking English, but I had a hard time. But all my Japanese students understood what he was saying. And I'm like, so much for being a native speaker, So the goal is not to turn our students into Americans. It's to use English as a mode of communication. And then once you get English as a Japanese person, your mind just opens up to just new ideas. English is an amazing language, I think. And I think it's amazing because there's no honorific. Really, in East Asia, I'm always like, and Korean and Japanese have different honorifics. So, I travel to Korea a lot. Am I using the right form? Was I just rude to this guy? Is this ending correct? In English, we don't really have that. So it's really helpful for making friends, actually, because it's a direct language, and there's no hierarchy in the language. But in Japanese or Korean, you use the wrong form. Boy, you're really insulting.
How are you getting the word out about it?
Well, we haven't recruited any students yet, but we're going to have contests in the beginning. So we're going to have speech contests, how to make a better Japan. And then in the beginning, we're just going to offer them a free chance at our school. So we're going to just again, we can do this because our professors aren't getting paid. We can take kind of aggressive, sort of financial hits in one sense. And so we're going to have contests like this and then just have students come in English. So we're going to promote English education. Because if you know anything about Japan, Tokyo's twice the population of Osaka, but it probably has 10 times the amount of schools. incorporation. So Osaka is such a mega city, but it's so neglected because Tokyo is only like a 7-hour drive up north. And so that's one way. Contests, offering free things, using social media. I mean, we have a tight budget. So one thing we're going to do is there's some American churches, Anglo churches, that want to help us. And so one way is I might bring 50 of them over and just park them in Osaka Station. Can you imagine 50 Anglos in Osaka? I mean, you saw the video, right? I mean, they totally stick out, you know? So we have churches that want to help us. So short-term people will come, and maybe, you know, some of you who are Christian, or even if you're non-Christian who want to come help, can help us with that marketing. But yeah, we're hoping people with some serious marketing skills can come help us. I mean, I'm a philosopher, so I say, what is marketing? Why marketing? Yes.
Talking about how
Yeah. Yes. Very new, yeah. Hmm. Okay. Well, so the question is, what challenges do I face knowing that Japan is such a difficult field and just totally new? We actually don't know in a lot of ways because we're a startup. But we do kind of have a first mover's advantage. We are the very first, as far as I know, the only all English language college in Osaka. The very first one of its kind, with 17.5 million in the metro area. So we'll be kind of learning. So that's one thing. Second thing is because of English, again, there are young people there who are interested in it. So we're going to offer something new, kind of a sort of a right brain approach to education. And, sorry. Anyway, yeah, so one of the challenges I think that we're going to really face is just, right, I don't know how to do this, I'm not technically, let's see. I think the biggest challenge for us will be how we can balance reaching students that need us from having to run like a school. I mean, obviously we need people to pay tuition. So that's going to be, I think, our single greatest challenge. Because the students we want to reach can't pay, at least not yet. So we do need a mix of middle class and lower middle class to kind of balance out and the way we're going to do it, I think, is just by using lots of online technology. Japanese do not believe in online schools. One reason they can't do that is the language itself does not lend to online education like English does. And they can't go to the University of Phoenix online because of their English. So the challenges of that, of building this infrastructure. So what we're planning on doing is we're going to have all of our school online, and then we're going to lecture in person, have them listen to it in person, and then listen to it online, and then interact online. So I think we're out of time. Those of you who can come to lunch, please join us for lunch. I would love to engage with you more. Before you leave, please feel free to take one of my cards. I'll leave it right here. And then let's connect. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. And yes, I do only use Google as my search browser. So thank you. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate everyone coming today.